My sister grabbed my daughter's brand new bike, the one she had been saving up for months with her allowance and the gift money from her grandparents, and without a word, she dragged it across the driveway and hurled it straight into the trash bin. The sound of the frame hitting metal echoed like a slap. My 6-year-old screamed and burst into tears, clutching my leg, while my sister stood there breathing hard as if she had just proved a point. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I looked straight at her and said one sentence that made her face drop instantly, because she knew I wasn't bluffing. But before I tell you what I said, you need to understand why that moment carried so much weight. My sister, Hannah, had always treated me like the easy target in the family. She was the wild one, the one my parents excused with phrases like, "That's just how she is," or "Don't take it personally." Growing up, she would take my clothes, ruin my things, humiliate me at school events, and somehow I was always the one told to forgive, to keep the peace, to let it go. When I got married and had my daughter, I thought distance would soften her, cruelty. But it only gave her new ways to strike. Hannah never liked that I managed to build a calm, stable life while hers was constant chaos. She moved from one boyfriend to another, always broke, always borrowing money, always needing a couch to crash on. My mistake was opening the door too many times, thinking, maybe this time she'll change. Each time she left behind drama, broken trust, and bills I had to cover. Still, I let her back in because my parents pressured me, because she's family, because my daughter adored having an aunt, at least until she started seeing Hannah's darker side. That day with the bike wasn't random. It was my daughter's birthday. She had just unwrapped the bike, bright pink with a little basket, streamers on the handles, the kind of thing every little girl dreams of. We had set it on the driveway for her to try. And then Hannah, sulking in the corner because nobody was paying attention to her, marched out and destroyed it in front of everyone. I swear the party went silent. Kids stopped mid-bite. Parents froze. Even the neighbors who had come over just stared. My daughter sobbed so hard she couldn't catch her breath. Hannah crossed her arms like a teenager caught shoplifting and muttered, "She doesn't need it. Spoiled brat." And that's when something in me snapped, but not in the way it used to. I didn't scream or fall apart. I leaned down, wiped my daughter's tears, stood up straight, and with everyone watching, I delivered the one sentence that ended Hannah's power over me forever. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "If you ever come near my daughter again, I'll have you arrested for harassment, and this time, I'll make sure it sticks." Her smirk cracked in an instant. She tried to laugh it off, tossing her hair and rolling her eyes, but the silence from the family was louder than anything I could have shouted. For the first time in years, nobody rushed to defend her. Not my mother, who usually chirped. Hannah didn't mean it. Not my father, who always muttered, "Don't make a scene." They just stared at her, wide-eyed, like they'd finally seen what I had endured all my life. But the truth was, that moment had been building for months, maybe years. Hannah's jealousy had grown sharper ever since I refused to lend her $5,000 last spring. She had called me selfish, screamed that I was abandoning her, told the whole family I was rolling in money while she was starving. In reality, I was juggling rent, groceries, my daughter's school fees. Nothing glamorous, just careful budgeting. But Hannah always spun a narrative where she was the victim and I was the villain. When I didn't give her the money, she stormed out, and for weeks she posted cryptic rants online about backstabbing sisters. I ignored it, like I always had. Until the bike. My daughter's face, crumpled with grief, burned into me that this wasn't about me anymore. Hannah wasn't just lashing out at me. She was hurting my child, crossing a line that could never be walked back. After the party, while guests awkwardly trickled out, Hannah tried to corner me in the kitchen. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone," she hissed. "You think you're better than me? Newsflash. You're not. You're just a boring, Single mom with no life. I remember setting down the cake knife and turning to her, calm as ice. Maybe I am boring, I said. But at least my daughter is safe. You can't say the same about your life, can you? For once, she had no comeback. Just that stunned look, the one I'd waited decades to see. The shift didn't happen overnight, but it started right then. My phone began buzzing with texts. From relatives. I can't believe she did that. You handled it perfectly. We saw everything. People who had spent years telling me to forgive Hannah were suddenly admitting they'd been wrong. It was like watching a wall collapse, brick by brick, all because I finally stopped playing my assigned role. The following week, Hannah tried to spin the story, of course. She called my parents sobbing, saying I had humiliated her, that I turned everyone against her, that I was trying to erase her from the family. Normally, they would have eaten it up and rushed to scold me, but this time they hesitated. My dad finally said, "Hannah, we saw what you did. That was a child's birthday gift." She screamed at him, hung up, and then flooded my phone with texts that swung from insults to desperate pleas. "You're a heartless witch. You're my only sister. Don't abandon me. Fine, I'll pay you back every penny if you just fix this with Mom and Dad." I didn't reply. For once, silence was my shield. Meanwhile, my daughter kept asking if her aunt hated her. That broke me in ways Hannah never could. I sat her down, looked her in the eyes, and said, "Sweetheart, some people hurt others because they are hurting inside, but it's not your fault, and it's not your job to fix them." She nodded slowly, like she understood more than any 6-year-old should have to. The truth is, Hannah wasn't just destructive, she was dangerous. She had a history of reckless behavior, drunk driving, fights with boyfriends, even a shoplifting charge that my parents quietly paid off years ago. I had kept all of it buried, partly to protect her, partly because I didn't want to be accused of airing family secrets. But watching her toss that bike into the trash like my daughter's joy meant nothing. It flipped a switch. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of her abusive messages, photos of the trashed bike, bank statements showing borrowed money that was never repaid, even old emails where she threatened to ruin me if I didn't help her. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just bracing for her next blow. I was preparing for the day she'd push too far, and I'd have the receipts to end it. And deep down, I knew that day was coming sooner than she thought. 2 weeks later, it happened. Hannah showed up at my door uninvited, reeking of alcohol, pounding so hard, my daughter hid behind the couch crying. When I opened just a crack, she shoved past me into the living room, slurring, "You think you can cut me off? You think you're better than me now?" I told her to leave, but she laughed in my face and grabbed the framed photo of my daughter on her bike before it was destroyed and smashed it on the floor. My daughter screamed. That was it. I picked up my phone and dialed 911 in front of her. For the first time in her life, she saw I wasn't bluffing. When the officers arrived minutes later, Hannah was still ranting, calling me a traitor, a monster, claiming I had turned everyone against her. But I had already gathered everything. The broken frame on the floor, the texts, the witnesses from the birthday party. The officers listened, took notes, and when my daughter timidly stepped forward and whispered, "She broke my bike," one of them looked at Hannah with a mix of disgust and pity. They escorted her out while she screamed over her shoulder, "You'll regret this. You need me." But her voice cracked, and I could see she knew the balance had shifted. That night, I sat with my daughter until she fell asleep, her little body still shaking. I realized then this wasn't just about standing up to Hannah. It was about teaching my daughter what boundaries look like, showing her that no one, not even family, has the right to hurt her. I filed for a restraining order the next morning. It wasn't easy. My parents begged me to reconsider, said I was going too far, that family doesn't take family to court. But I looked them in the eye and said, Family doesn't terrorize a 6-year-old either. For once, they had no reply. The restraining order was granted within days, and when Hannah was served, she exploded. She spammed social media with long rants about how I had betrayed blood, tagging distant relatives and mutual friends, painting herself as the victim. But instead of the sympathy she expected, the comments turned against her. People asked, "Why would your sister need a restraining order if you weren't dangerous?" Others posted screenshots of her past drunken fights, her public meltdowns, even stories of times she had borrowed money and never paid it back. It was like a dam broke. Suddenly, everyone had a Hannah story, and none of them were flattering. She tried to pivot, messaging me privately, "Please take it down. I'll apologize. I'll buy a new bike. I'll do anything." But I didn't respond. I wasn't playing her game anymore. Meanwhile, my daughter began to heal. One evening, we went to the park and I surprised her with a new bike. This time a little sturdier, with a helmet she picked out herself. As she pedaled down the path, her laughter ringing out, I felt something shift inside me. For years I had carried Hannah's chaos like a weight on my back, convincing myself it was my duty. Watching my daughter ride freely, I understood the truth. My duty was to protect her, not to save a sister who refused to save herself. A week later, I received a letter from Hannah's landlord. She had put me down as her emergency contact, and now she was being evicted. I stared at the notice, remembering all the times I had bailed her out before, paid her rent, covered her utilities, even sent grocery money when she claimed she was starving. This time, I folded the paper neatly and filed it away. Her problems were no longer mine to fix. A month passed, and the silence from Hannah was almost unsettling. But then came the letter. She was facing court over unpaid rent and damage to her apartment, and she listed me as a character reference. I laughed out loud reading it. For years, I had been her shield, her excuse, her cleanup crew. Now she thought I'd still play along. I folded the paper and set it aside, knowing my answer was already written in stone. When the court date arrived, I was subpoenaed as a witness, and for the first time Hannah had to sit across from me in a room where her words couldn't twist reality. The judge asked if I had ever covered her debts. I pulled out receipts, bank, transfers, money orders, even old texts where she promised to pay me back next week that never came. I watched her face crumble as I laid each piece of evidence down. She tried to interrupt, shouting that I was lying, that I had made it all up, but the judge silenced her. For once, her tantrums carried no weight. When the decision came, it was brutal but fair. She was evicted, ordered to repay a portion of what she owed, and placed on probation for harassment tied to the incident at my house. As we left the courthouse, she rushed after me in the parking lot, tears streaking her makeup, begging, "Please don't leave me like this. You're my sister." I turned, calm as ever, and said, "I gave you 30 years of chances. My daughter gets the rest of me now." Her knees buckled like I'd struck her. She muttered something I couldn't hear and walked the other way. That was the last time I saw her in person. After the court case, the fallout rippled through the family like an earthquake. For years, Hannah had been the center of gravity, pulling everyone into her drama, demanding attention, manipulating our parents into bailing her out. Now that the courts had branded her as the aggressor, the narrative was shattered. My mother called me late one night, her voice trembling, and for the first time in my life, she whispered, "I think we failed you. We let her hurt you over and over." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, "You think?" But another part of me felt only exhaustion. Their realization didn't erase the years I had endured, but it confirmed what I already knew. I had been right to draw the line. Meanwhile, my daughter thrived in the quiet. Her nightmares stopped, her laughter returned, and she rode her new bike through the neighborhood like she owned the streets. The neighbors waved, and instead of pitying glances, They offered support. One even told me, "You did the right thing. Kids need to see us stand up to bullies, even when those bullies are family." Hannah, however, spiraled. She lost her apartment, bounced between couches, and when one of her old boyfriends posted online about her scamming him too, she became a local cautionary tale. I watched from a distance, not with glee, but with a cold clarity. This was the life she had built with her choices, brick by brick, lie by lie. And yet, she still tried to claw back into mine. She sent letters through my parents, begging for forgiveness, promising she'd change if I'd just lift the restraining order. Each time I tossed them into a drawer unopened. Because forgiveness without accountability isn't healing, it's permission. The breaking point came when she showed up outside my daughter's school, waiting by the fence. She didn't approach, maybe because she knew she couldn't, but the sight of her lurking was enough. The principal called me immediately, and within hours Hannah was in violation of the court order. That was the day the police told her flat out, one more incident and she'd face jail time. And I think, in that moment, she finally believed me. After the school incident, everything unraveled for Hannah at lightning speed. The violation went on her record, and with that, any chance of her securing a new lease or a steady job evaporated. Word spread quickly. Landlords talk, employers check. For someone who thrived on image and charm, it was the beginning of a long free fall. I stayed quiet, no longer playing defense or warning others. When people reached out to ask if the rumors were true, I simply forwarded copies of the police reports, the restraining order, the court documents. I didn't need to embellish. The facts spoke louder than Hannah ever had. For the first time, the mask she wore for decades slipped, and people saw what I had seen since childhood. My parents struggled, caught between guilt and denial. They begged me to ease up, to help her get back on her feet. But I reminded them gently that she was a grown woman with a lifetime of second chances behind her. My responsibility was not to rescue her again, but to protect my daughter and myself. That clarity made me stronger than I had ever been. Meanwhile, my daughter began to understand the lesson buried in the chaos. One evening at dinner, she asked, "Mom, is Aunt Hannah still mad at us?" I looked at her steady and said, "She's mad at herself, sweetheart. People who hurt others are usually hurting inside, but we don't let them take it out on us anymore." She nodded, serious beyond her years, and I realized this was the true revenge. Not Hannah's downfall, not the court orders or the shattered reputation, but the fact that my daughter was growing up knowing her mother refused to let abuse pass as love. Hannah tried one last time to break through, sending me a long letter stuffed into my mailbox. In it, she begged, threatened, apologized, and cursed me all at once, her handwriting jagged and desperate. I read the first line, then calmly slid it into a file with the rest of my documentation. Because that was all she was now. Paperwork. In a drawer, proof of why I finally walked away. Hannah's collapse wasn't dramatic like in the movies. It was slow, pathetic, and undeniable. She drifted from couch to couch, burning every bridge she had left. Friends who once excused her behavior stopped answering her calls. Old boyfriends posted screenshots of her begging for money, threatening to expose her secrets if they didn't comply. Even our parents, who had defended her since childhood, began to retreat when they realized helping her meant risking their own savings and peace of mind. My mother confessed one evening that Hannah had stolen her wedding ring to pawn for cash. "I always thought she'd grow out of it," she whispered, clutching her empty hand. "But she's only gotten worse." It broke something in her, finally. My father, too, admitted he was tired of rescuing someone who doesn't want to be saved. For me, the real turning point came quietly. I was sitting on the porch, sipping tea while my daughter practiced on her bike in the driveway, when an envelope slid under the door. No postage, no return address. Inside was a torn photo of the two of us as children, scribbled over with the words, "You ruined me." I sat there staring at it, realizing Hannah still believed I was responsible for her life falling apart. That was the truth of it. She had built her entire identity on blaming others, and now, stripped of excuses, she clung to her hatred like it was all she had left. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I placed the photo in the same file as the rest, closed the drawer, and locked it. From that moment on, she was no longer my problem. The irony is, the world didn't end without her. In fact, it got lighter. My daughter flourished, her confidence blooming with every ride down the street. I found peace in the routines I had once taken for granted. Cooking dinner without chaos, bedtime stories without interruption, mornings without dread of another crisis call. The silence Hannah left behind wasn't empty. It was freedom. And, for the first time in my life, I wasn't surviving her storms. I was living beyond them. I haven't seen Hannah in over a year now, and I don't plan to. Last I heard, she was drifting between shelters, still telling anyone who'd listen that I ruined her life. But here's the truth. I didn't ruin her. I just stopped being her shield. She ruined herself, one choice at a time. And for once, I let the consequences stay where they belonged. My daughter is 8 now. She rides her bike with confidence, hair flying behind her, no trace of the little girl who sobbed as her birthday gift was thrown into the trash. She's stronger because she saw me stand up and say no more. And she knows now that family doesn't mean you have to accept abuse. Sometimes family is the first place you have to draw the line. I don't hate my sister. I don't even think about her most days. What I do think about is the life we've built in her absence, the laughter at the dinner table, the safety in our home, the calm that comes from knowing the chaos has no key to our door. People ask if I ever regret cutting her off if I feel guilty about how far she's fallen. My answer is simple. Guilt is what kept me chained for 30 years. Freedom came the moment I realized I didn't owe her my peace, and my daughter didn't owe her innocence. My revenge wasn't destroying Hannah. It was walking away, refusing to let her destruction swallow us too. And if she ever tries to come back, she'll find what she should have seen the day she threw that bike into the trash. I am not her safety net, and I never will be again. This story was created by me, Sarah, the author and voice behind Revenge with Sarah. Every detail and every twist is my own writing, made for women who know what it means to fight back and set boundaries. What do you think? Did Olivia go too far or not far enough? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true-to-life revenge stories every week.